Joining us today is Lisa Bragg, author, speaker, and advisor. Through her research, Lisa's uncovered that discomfort with self-promotion is a universal challenge, especially for women.
You know, so many of us have been taught to wait your turn or to be nice. And being nice means that you give your credit away. We've been taught, if your work were that good, it would speak for itself. Well, then my work isn't that good because nobody's talking about my work. So then I'm going to work harder and I'm going to do more things. And then we start on this cycle and then we're looking for this external validation.
It's time to stop hiding. Learn how to talk about your work with authenticity and confidence. Let's dive in. Lisa, welcome to the podcast. Lisa has literally written the book on how to talk about success. Her book, Bragging Rights, How to Talk About Your Work Using Purposeful Self-Promotion, was released in May. You are a speaker, advisor, professional mentor. You have founded MediaFace, which is a Toronto-based consulting firm, and you're also, in a previous life, a TV reporter. So first and foremost, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here.
So glad we're here. And I've just enjoyed your other episodes too. So many things to listen to.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm excited because, listen, this is a topic that I have had to personally put a lot of time and investment and skill. It does not come naturally to me. I can boast all I want, talking about products or companies that I work for, but when it comes to my own personal achievements, I have to work a little harder at that and be very mindful.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot to dive in, but I want to first set the context because bragging can have many connotations, but as it relates to your work and the content we're going to continue to talk about, how should we think about bragging?
So bragging means how to talk about one's success with pride. But the reframe is that pride also means justified self-love. So that's that give yourself that pat on the back, that big hug. It's justified. And where we get confused is self-aggrandizement. It's a mouthful. And that's actually where we see that puffery, that ickiness, that I'm better than you, all that kind of stuff comes in self-aggrandizement. So, I would really love to liberate the word brag because we have bragging rights, which we say, hey, your team has bragging rights. We say that as something that we want and we want to cheer people on so that they have bragging rights. So we just need to find our language and finesse things a little bit more. So I would love to liberate bragging a bit more.
Well, you use self-promotion and purposeful self-promotion a lot in this book. And how should we think about purposeful self-promotion? I know many people think about, I'm either talking about my achievements, my work, or my personal brand. But let's start with the definition.
So self-promotion, I figure it is, so bragging is, what is the success thing that I want to talk about? And self-promotion, those are the tactics that I want to get out into the world. Am I going to be on more podcasts? Am I going to write a newsletter, send out emails? Am I going to really do more on social media, commit this year to doing more on social media? Or am I going to pick up the phone and call someone or go to a networking event? Mm-hmm. So self-promotion is the way. So it's not a social media book and it's not all about social media because so many of us, it's a thing to do, but it's not the thing for everyone. And what I talk a lot about too is that we want to narrowcast instead of broadcasting. And so social media is one of those broadcasting tools, but really, how do we think about that audience we want to serve? And that's why I want it to be purposeful. Who do you actually want to reach? And it could be an audience of all of the internet, which is unrealistic for us. But it could be an audience of one. Who is that one person that you really want to reach and be in their sun? Who is that person? And then trying to get in contact with them because it can come down to life-changing results can be one person. And so when we think instead of broadcasting to everyone, I have to put out social media posts every day, I'm going to be a social media guru. No, it's really about how do I get in front of that person that I am meant to serve? And really what it's about, bragging and self-promotion, it's really about how I am meant to serve. If I can tell the world, this is how I am of service, then they're going to use me. But so many people that I've connected with in writing the book and in all these podcasts and everything that I'm doing now, we don't tell people how we are of service. So then they go down the hall to that mediocre person instead of finding us. And so that's why we need to talk about our successes so that people know that we are the awesome person that they need to come to for however we're meant to serve.
What was the journey like for you pivoting from being an interviewer in television to now you're out here talking about your book and having to kind of come across very differently. So what was that journey like for you?
Every day it's a practice. And that's why I am my book. And people are saying, like, well, aren't you beyond that? You know what? It's a practice because so many of us, we've been taught, put your head down, do good work, and eventually someone will notice you. And as a journalist, back in my day, we weren't supposed to be part of the story. Yes, I was in there and I'd be at the scene and doing whatever it was, but it was always about the audience, the people who were in my story and featured. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't talk about myself. People really didn't know a lot about me. And so it was really actually quite hard to move from journalist and then into a business owner, because then I put my business owner hat on and I was the company. And so I didn't know where MediaFace, my content company, what started and ended, and where did I start? And so I was, I just had that CEO label, entrepreneur, on my head. And that was what I did. And I fed everything into the company.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. If you're not an entrepreneur with a company, you work inside an organization. And so you might say, well, I'm a director, I'm a VP, I'm a manager, I'm a leader. And that is your end all be all titles. But titles are fleeting. And so I found it really hard to go from, not talking about my success and really everyone, it's all for the team, into saying, well, no, I need to start claiming credit because then people know how I am of service. Mm-hmm. I would love it if people could just find me on my tiny piece of the internet. Just come to my website, find me there. It doesn't work that way. Don't you wish it would? I'm like, come on, find me.
Yeah.
So we have to go and do the work and put effort behind it and know that sometimes you are going to fall off and not, do whatever the book says to do for a little while, but then you come back to it and realize, okay, I'm going to start again and keep moving forward.
So in your work with people, especially women who may feel uncomfortable about talking about their achievements, what's at the root of this?
So many of us have been taught to wait your turn or to be nice. And being nice means that you give your credit away. And, there's no I in team, but there is I in credit. We've been taught to, if you were that good, your work would speak for itself. Or to really, truly believe in meritocracy, which doesn't quite work unless you're close to power. And so these things are often ingrained in us. We want to be kind to each other, but we end up giving away too much when we're too nice. And so I think there's a challenge with us that we've been conditioned. If your work were that good, it would speak for itself. Well, then my work isn't that good because nobody's talking about my work, or I'm not getting that promotion. So then I'm going to work harder and I'm going to do more things. And then we start on this cycle and then we're looking for this external validation. So it becomes this whole thing instead of saying, wait a minute, you know what? I need to do self-promotion. I need to talk about my successes. I need to brag to myself first. And that's some of the ways that we can get over it. But I found, at first I thought, is it a white Canadian woman's problem? Is it my problem that, my last name is Bragg? Do I just feel insecure where I don't want to talk about myself? I'm going to just keep working harder. And so I realized, though, through my international research that it's not just my problem. It's actually global. So many people who went to my research said, yes, it's me. Bragging is icky. You don't talk about your successes. You wait for others. But in this day and age, we can't wait for anyone else because everyone's so busy with their own lives, doing their own things. We can't even remember what we wore or ate yesterday. So how do we expect other people to do that for us? And frankly, nobody cares about your future the way you do. So having compassion for yourself, knowing that it's generational. We went to factories as, a long time ago, but we went into factories and we were told to be cogs in the machine. And it's only now that we're saying, okay, no. Now you need to talk about yourself because you are back to being, you are your own product in this knowledge economy. So how do you get out there and sell yourself, especially when people don't necessarily understand what you do and all the strengths that you have? But compassion for yourself and for the next person too, who isn't really good at self-promotion yet either, understanding and asking and helping them along the way. But it's a challenge.
Yeah. And the pitfall too, and maybe it started in school with put your head down, work hard, your teacher will notice you, the grades will come. That has translated into the workforce where it's this overexertion, proving oneself. But then there's the resentment and the anger that starts building of why can't this person see or notice everything that I'm doing, and why should I have to?
Yeah, that is such a good, understanding of it though. But we are taught in school, here's the rubric, but it doesn't apply when we're in real life too. So it's very much ingrained. And that's where we also get these perfectionist tendencies where we have to be perfect because that's what we're used to from school. Where nowadays, I talk about 75% is the new 100%. Like just if you are in most positions, right? If we're an architect, we have to be 100%. But most of the time, our effort that we give, the people who listen to your podcast, they're already giving 100%, or let's use some sports terms, 115%. You're already giving that and more. But if we dial it down and just say, you know what, I'm going to try this at 75%, it's going to be scary to do that because you're used to giving everything your all. But I bet nobody will notice that you've shaved off 25%. It's shrinkflation. Try that. Try it a little bit to see how it feels to just give something that it's good enough. Ship it, as Seth Godin talks about.
I would say the 75%, I get there faster because I'm not in my head kind of worrying about all of the what ifs in the lack of perfection. And so even in that, the 75% is 25% better because of that dynamic shift, right? What are some practical techniques for promoting oneself without coming across boastful?
Well, I don't use the word boastful too much. It's an interesting word. I find that's the word that I go to when people aren't really doing things well. So instead of saying self-aggrandizement, boastful. I think it's such a tricky word though. All of this is tricky because it's so much about context. So it's context of where people are. So you and I can talk about having podcasts, but to someone else listening behind us, they may want a podcast and hearing us talk about it might conjure up some feelings to them. Or, we might be homeowners or going to a cottage or traveling. And it depends on the person you're talking to. And so it's the context you're in. That's why so often our families don't understand us. They don't understand what we're doing and we're getting up to. Families, it's often an interesting dynamic of support or no support at all. And it's context-based because they don't understand the world you're in. And so you can easily brag to people who are in the same context as you, but it's different. So that's where you have to understand, who am I talking to and what is it that I want to convey? And that's why so often we don't speak about our successes because we're not talking to the right audience, or we think that our audience doesn't want to know. And in my research, I also found that if you don't tell people who want to know about your successes, they'll get upset.
Let's say you're working in an organization and you've been part of a team, and maybe that team, their work isn't always visible or seen. What are some ways in your book that, people can showcase their own individual contributions, but offset that with other dynamic too, so that people might feel more comfortable talking about their contribution and not defer to the team dynamic?
Yeah, we so often just give it away. We do. And there's, like Tom will have been the project hero last time, but Tom goes on paternity leave. And so we're doing all the work, but who comes back with donuts at the very last minute to join that meeting? Tom. So who gets all the success and the kudos? Tom, because credit goes where credit knows. And so that's where we have to leave the trail that we are involved in things all the way along. Otherwise, credit will just go to Tom again. So we need to start sending out signals that we are involved in projects. And so letting your leader know that you're participating, following up with a meeting after the meeting and saying, thank you, and here's what I'm up to. Letting people know more frequently what you're up to is really important. Understand your leader's agenda. Like, what does she really want? And then finding those ways that you can reinforce it. But it's really hard with credit because we also don't want to be a team of saying, that's my credit, that's me. It's how do I help you shine, and how do I also shine along the way? And so I often teach, leaders how to make sure that their team is saying, you know what, here's my success, but here's what Jen did. So making sure as a leader you say, hey, Lisa, what did you do? And I did this. So, and then who would you give credit to? And then you often see them pause, your team will pause, because then they'll be, oh my goodness, I have to actually think about someone else. And then when they say, hey, Jen did all these things, then you also realize who is really doing all the work behind the scenes instead of that one person. Because it's so easy to assume credit when something's polished and ready to go. But when you ask those questions, so who would you give credit to for all this work? besides yourself, who else? And that then leads to so much more information. I had people in the research report that they had people essentially take the research, take the information out of their desk, put their name on it, and hand it in. Like, that still happens today. And so asking some good questions as a leader will help really unveil who's doing what behind the scenes. But as an individual contributor, you want to make sure that you're following up and letting your team know what you're participating in, how you're doing with it, and making sure that you're giving credit to other people. Because when we shine a spotlight on others, it comes back to us.
I've also seen people do this very well back to the context is, piping up in a meeting with what you're working on, but then also showcasing the context of the insight, what I've learned, what the customers are saying, like drawing value to the whole group based on what you're working on too is another way to kind of thread that needle.
And that's a great point, because that's where we need to be collecting those testimonials and listening when our clients say something. When that customer says something, are you capturing that in some way? Oh, they think that's good. And of course, we're always looking to what do we need to improve. But when someone gives you a compliment, when you're finishing something and you're hearing those good words, make sure you're grabbing them. Start a brag book where you're collecting all these great ideas from your clients or from other contributors. Like, what else are people saying?
Yeah. Where do people fall down as it relates to this particular topic, though? What are pitfalls to avoid, I would say, as it relates to sharing your wins?
Well, we get into self-deprecation mode. We'll say, somebody will give us a compliment or we'll say a success, but then right away, it will be all the things that went wrong behind the scenes. So self-deprecation, very few people can actually execute self-deprecation well. And so for many leaders, they should avoid it. We think we're being humble by it and being funny, but actually we're modeling something that's not healthy for our team and it's not good for us. So many of us, we're already in a position where we are humble and we have way too much humility. And so we go into self-deprecation mode. And so we'll say a win and, or we'll thank somebody for an award or whatever it is that we have. And then we'll say, but here's all the problems that went along with it. My hair wasn't good. I need to lose 10 pounds but this part, I didn't do this one part quite well, and so it's like, but nobody was going to bring that up, but we want to serve that up so that we're less than. And I challenge you on that, because we think that we're more likable, but meanwhile, often it just leads us to being hidden gems that other people can use our work and get ahead further, farther, faster on our work.
So what have you seen work well in organizations that leaders can put in place with their teams to really help people feel comfortable with self-promotion?
Well, doing an exercise it sounds pretty easy, but actually it's a tough one. But helping your team realize how they're remarkable, like what makes them remarkable, and beyond I'm a good parent, kind of thinking a good dog parent, whatever it is, but beyond that goes into who you are, especially in your career. Like, what is it about you that makes you remarkable? Because it's hard to compete now on who's the best, things like that, but it's what makes you remarkable, what makes you distinct. And so asking your employees, but taking time to allow them to talk about their successes. What wins do you have? We're so quick to talk about failures right now. Failure has been one of those great big things that always keeps getting in business periodicals. Talk about failure, but we don't have enough talk about success. And because so many of us are afraid to talk about success, it makes it hard, because then we're afraid through and through. Failure is hard. Success is hard. And a lot of people actually find it easier to talk about their failures than talk about your successes. We have more people that we would tell our failures to than tell our successes to. And so that's challenging. So as a leader, well, get the book. Chapter 13 is all for you on how you help your teams to talk about their successes. But do a brag session where you have everyone say, here's something I want you to know about my successes, and allow people to riff off of that and talk about it. And then have the team say, yes, that's true, and more, and then go around again. And so each person tells something that they feel is a success story. So things like that might be a bit of a leap, but allowing a culture of people talking about credit, taking credit, giving credit is critical for a healthy organization. But it starts with you demonstrating and making sure that you're watching for credit. It's hard because I always worry about putting more work on leaders at this point in time where they have so many more things, but you will have a much healthier climate in your culture if you start helping recognize your employees more and more.
As you see the world changing, the landscape of the business world is changing. Where is this really benefiting people in their careers in this moment in time?
The world is changing so fast. I think we need to let people know now where we are so that in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that they can see the progression of all the things that we've done. It's so hard in this changing landscape that all of a sudden something happens in your career where you want to make a massive pivot, but you haven't left anything along the way. Not breadcrumbs, because that's something that goes away, but what markers are you leaving? Markers of success so that people can say, oh, okay, she does deserve this. And I always tell people to mark it to where you want to go. Again, we worry so much about our reputation, where we were, but where do you want to go? And we need to start today signaling those things instead of worrying about the past. Signal to the future what you want to do. And so that's what I would say is looking, where do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And start moving towards that, making sure that if you are on social media, that you're finding the people who are doing what you want to do or who would be the clients of what you want to do, and starting to figure out who they are, where they play, and get in their sun more. So that would be something I'd say right now. But right now with this landscape, there's so many things. I think being a human, we're humans, helping humans is critical as technology becomes more and more infused in our lives. Who thought it could be more? But that's where so many people are making content that is just AI driven. I challenge you to make sure, even if you are using technology to assist you and to get going on it faster, to make sure that you have that human helping human lens on everything that you do and not just letting AI write it for you. Because I think there's going to be a sniff test. People can tell the words of it. So making sure that it's your own, but bring your humanness to everything that you do. I think we're also moving beyond just everything in the head, much more to heart and to your gut, your soul, your intuition, whatever you want to call it. But that vibe, your vibration, all those things come into play more and more so now. People can feel you. They can sense you. I think we want to be more with humans too as we get more into technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, for everyone, I suggest picking up Bragging Rights. It's a reflection of the times, and we are ready. We are ready to go to new heights as a culture. We will link all of your details in the show notes so that people can find you and connect with you. So congratulations on all of your fantastic success.
Thank you. I'll be cheering you on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, where we transform the wisdom from our podcast into practical tips, tools, and takeaways for your leadership journey. Find us at grit.grace.podcast. See you next week.